Welcome to the Politica UK InfoPod. Today's question is an unusual one, but it may capture the real economic battleground of the Iran war. Could this conflict ultimately be fought not only on land, at sea, or in the air, but at the gas pumps? Because in modern geopolitics, energy prices can be just as powerful as missiles. Over the past 24 hours, global oil markets have surged sharply as the conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran expands. Brent crude has climbed above $100 a barrel, with prices at times approaching $120, levels not seen since the energy shock that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Markets are reacting not simply to the fighting itself, but to something much larger: the risk that the war could disrupt global oil supply. At the center of this concern lies one narrow waterway, the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20% of the world's oil normally passes through this channel between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. If shipping slows or stops, energy supplies to much of the world can be affected almost immediately. That is why oil markets move so violently when tensions rise in the region. In practical terms, this means that the war can quickly show up in the most ordinary places: petrol stations, airline tickets, shipping costs, and food prices. Energy sits at the heart of almost every part of the global economy. When oil rises sharply, transportation becomes more expensive. Manufacturing costs rise. Air travel becomes more costly. Food production, which relies heavily on fuel and fertilizers, becomes more expensive as well. Economists are already warning that a prolonged conflict could push the world toward a familiar but dangerous combination: slower growth alongside rising prices, a situation known as stagflation. The impact, however, will not be evenly distributed. Countries that export oil may actually benefit from higher prices. Nations such as Saudi Arabia, Norway, and some Gulf states can see increased revenues when crude rises. But oil-importing economies face the opposite problem. Countries such as Japan, India, and many European states rely heavily on imported energy. When prices spike, the costs ripple quickly through their economies. Even developing economies far from the Middle East can feel the pressure. Across parts of Africa, analysts warn that higher fuel costs could drive inflation, weaken currencies, and increase economic strain in already fragile markets. And for ordinary households around the world, the effect may appear in a very familiar place: the petrol pump. Some analysts are already warning that if the conflict escalates further, petrol prices in some countries could approach record levels seen during previous energy crises. So while the war itself is being fought with missiles, drones, and naval forces, the economic consequences may be felt thousands of miles away by drivers filling their cars. In that sense, the conflict carries two battlefields. One is the military theater in the Middle East. The other is the global energy market, where every jump in oil prices transmits the shock of the war across the entire world economy. And that raises a final question. In modern conflicts, victory is not only measured by territory or military strength, it is also measured by economic endurance. Which countries can absorb higher energy costs? Which economies can survive prolonged price shocks? And how long can ordinary citizens tolerate rising fuel and food prices? Because if oil continues to surge, the Iran war may not only be fought in the Middle East, it may also be fought, quietly but powerfully, at the gas pumps of the world. This InfoPod was brought to you by Politica UK.